All right, we are back. We just want to say thanks again for everyone who has made it this far with our little for real-isodes. We've been having a ton of fun. Tina and I
Yeah.
always batch these episodes, so it gives us an excuse to sit down for an hour or two about once a month and really just catch up. That's kind of half the fun. But
Yeah, it
so
really is.
my next question for you, Tina, and it kind of actually, I guess it sort of relates to the question I asked you last week, which is this question is about your first job. So I want to know the story of how you got your first job, what was it, and how long did you work there?
Oh, good. And actually, on that note, this is a good thing for listeners. Um, Join in with us. Share with us what your first job was. Tell us which episode you're enjoying. We would love to hear from you. We love to see it when the conversations happen. So just a reminder to go do that because we'd love to see it. Okay, what was my first job? I'm trying to think if I had like some kind of like a informal job,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think I did. So my first job, you're going to laugh at this because this is very me. I did what we called in England a paper round, so newspaper delivery, but I didn't do one, I did two. So I did the morning shift where I had like maybe 15 houses where I would go to the what we call news agents, like the being equivalent, like kind of like a 7-Eleven, I suppose. Pick
Mm-hmm.
up the newspapers on my bike with my like this bright yellow vinyl S bag with a like black and white striped strap that would go over me. I'd ride my bike, deliver these papers to these giant houses that could afford to have their papers delivered.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved it because even though I got paid £2 a day, which is just now so funny. So I'd get like £12 a week, which for dollars, that would be, I mean, right now it's probably like $15, $17, maybe 20
Yeah.
a week. But I loved it. Not only I just loved getting up that early, being early. That was an indicator that I was going to do this. And this was probably age 13, maybe 14.
Oh,
And
wow.
then I would do that. And I loved, though, that around Christmas time, I'd get the envelopes that would be like, give me a £10
Yeah.
note or something. So I felt like that was
Oh,
worth it. But I also, once a week, people tended to do one or the other, but not both. Once a week, I would do the papers, the local papers, where I would deliver. I would get sent a stack of papers, probably like maybe 100 or so houses, and you would get all these leaflets from like ads and stuff. You'd get maybe 5 to 10 ads, and you'd have to like sit there on the floor, put one of each ad into each paper, put it aside,
oh
one of
my
each ad
gosh.
into each paper, put it aside, and then you'd go deliver them. And it took me probably an hour worth of sort of like organizing, and then 2 to 3 hours worth of delivery. So you'd walk along with this like basket, kind of almost reminds me of what an old person carries around in a
Yeah.
city, where they would have like their wheelie, like almost like a suitcase. And again, it was that yellow vinyl, bright yellow vinyl bag. And I would deliver these papers. And at some point, my parents would drop off the second half of the papers. And again, for that, I want to say, depending on the amount of ads you got, depending on the money, but I think I got paid, yeah, about £15 a week for that or something like that. So, but I loved
Wow.
that I was like a bit of a hustler and did both of those.
That doesn't surprise me at all. Yeah. Did you ever
Yeah,
have
I didn't
anything
think it would.
like you hear like stories like people being like chased by dogs, like delivering newspapers, or did you ever have anything like that happen or anyone like yell at you for any reason or?
There was definitely a few houses with because in England we don't have like mailboxes. The letterboxes, as we call them, are on the door. So you push it through and it goes into the house. So it's like the size of like probably like the height of a VHS, if people remember that height. And so there
Oh, I
was a few
remember from
houses
Harry
that,
Potter. That's the only reason I know that is from Harry Potter.
yeah, no, people are always like, oh wow. So you had to walk up each driveway and back. Like you couldn't cut, like the male people here tend to just walk across well, at least what I've seen, walk across, where you would have to go up the driveway, down the driveway, up the driveway, down the driveway.
Mm.
So it took a long time, but I remember there was a few houses that had these really angry dogs. Primarily this one that had what we call Jack Russell. Do you know what that is?
Yeah, Jack Russell
Very
Terrier. Yeah.
very aggressive, very like angry dog. And so I remember I would stuff it in, and there was a small part of me that was terrified of this dog, but also kind of loved the fact that it would go and like shred the paper as it came through the door, which I found funny, but also scary at the same time, that one day he was going to come jump and bite my
throwing
hands.
away their subscription money. Whoever
Well, it's not subscription. This is a free paper. Right. It was kind of one of those things that no one got a choice whether they had it or not. But yeah, so that's the main thing. I don't think I ever, it was obviously just sucked when it was raining. But otherwise, no, don't really have, there was just those random dogs that would come out. So maybe that was a part of why I'm scared of dogs.
Oh yeah, maybe. Honestly, Tina, I have loved these last couple of episodes because I just feel like I've never in my life pictured you with a yellow vinyl bag like delivering newspapers.
I wish I had a picture of it. I don't.
Please.
It still makes me laugh though, because when I go home, I still see these what we call. See, everyone called them paper boys because it was always boys. I was the only girl. No, but I still see them, and they've still got these same yellow vinyl bags. And I'm like, this is so funny that like all these years later, people are still doing this the same way. But
Man,
all right, your turn.
Oh man. So the last episode we talked about briefly the teeny tiny town that I lived in. So Hawkinson, Washington, again, a town of maybe 1,500 people. There was not much there except at the tail end of our road, the road that we lived on, it branched up from the town, up a hill, and it just went into the woods, basically way up into these hills. And at the end of this road, the very, very end, if you drove to the tail end, there was a place called Alderbrook Park. And when I was growing up, it was kind of, because it was a private park, it was always locked. And there were these rumors, almost like in like Willy Wonka, when they would like walk by the factory, like nobody ever comes in, nobody ever goes out. It was like that. So like you would hear these rumors of like, oh, if you turn on the water fountains, pink lemonade comes out. And like, oh, there was an old restaurant up there that burned down, and like all this stuff that you'd hear of like, oh, there's like a maze, like at a palace, like a maze cut into hedges. And so one day, I think I was maybe like 15 or 16, and me and a couple of my friends, we had that a little adventurous kick in us. So we were like, hey, let's ride our bikes up to Alderbrook. So we did. It was like 4 of us. We rode our bikes maybe 3 or 4 miles up into the middle of nowhere. You stop passing houses on your way. So we get to the gates and it's locked, like it's completely locked. And we're like, should we go inside? So the only thing we knew that it was used for was like every now and then on the weekends, big companies, like even like the Portland Trailblazers, the basketball team had once had their like private company picnic up there. Like it was like a big deal for like really like affluent companies. So we rode our bikes, we got to the gate, and there was a little gap behind the gate. So we were like, let's go in, because it's like not the weekend, no one's here. So we ride our bikes around the gate, and we're just riding through this empty park. And it was so bizarre because it was just like almost like a little like ghost town feel. And then all of a sudden we hear this voice behind us, and this guy is like, what are you doing? So we're like, stop on our bikes. And so we're just kind of like having a standoff with this guy who's just standing in the middle of the road. And I was like, we were hoping to fill out applications to work here this summer. And he's like, oh, great, follow me to the office. So we did. And we filled out these applications, and I got a job there. So that's how I got the job. So then where they put me, it turns out, first of all the freaking rumors were true. So at the beginning of the day, you would mix up these big buckets of pink lemonade, and you'd put them behind the fountains. So the water fountains did squirt pink lemonade. And where I worked, so me and my sister, I ended up getting her this job up there too. We worked at this tiny little like hot dog shack in the middle of Alderbrook Park. So we would stand there. So we would boil these like huge, enormous industrial sized vats of hot dogs behind us. We'd be like cooking in the steam all day. And we would be standing there with like ketchup and mustard on the counter. So then while one of us was keeping watch, the other one would like duck down and just shotgun hot dogs like all day. So we would just eat hot dogs while people like came up, and we would like, make them hot dogs and everything. But yeah, I worked there for like a summer, and it still, honestly, I look back on it now and it feels like a dream I had, but I'm pretty sure it actually happened. That was the summer when I was like 16. God. It was crazy.
Your stories are just like next level. Yeah. Yeah.
It was just very bizarre. It hadn't occurred to me like how strange it was until one day somebody asked me like, oh, how'd you get your first job? And I was like, like you were talking about sort of backing your way back into elite running. Like I backed my way into that job like hardcore.
Wow.
But yeah, it was crazy. Yeah.
And which sister was that who worked with you there?
That was Shannon. And by the time she got there, they were out of extra small uniforms. All they had was like an extra large. So she was like, she would have to bring like ponytails, like to like bind up her shirt, like behind her. Like, oh man, that was rough. That was right. And again, same thing. I'm pretty sure we maybe made 50 cents an hour. Like it was not. And you would just ride your bike up there in the morning and then ride back in the afternoon. But yeah, it was bananas. But honestly, like I look back, I'm so grateful for that humble first job of like working in a hot dog shack, you know?
Yes.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it is. It's funny when a few years ago we were having a babysitter, someone who was down the street, and she was 16, I think, at the time. Watch the girls, and when she said about being paid, her mum was like, "Just pay her like $8 an hour," and I was like, $8? Like that's insulting. And she was like, "No, seriously, like pay her $8." And I was like, "I feel like I should pay her like 15." And she's like, no, like this needs to, and she was adamant. Yes. She's like, "Do not give her." I know it feels like it's nothing, but like, she does not need that much money. She needs to understand like what money means, and not everything is handed to her. Yeah.
Well, I think that too, Tina, of like both you and I sort of worked our way up as Division II athletes, and then as sort of B-tier professional runners who were able to eventually carve out a living at it. I'm so grateful that I wasn't one of those kids who was like a prodigy at 16 and plucked straight out of high school for $100,000 contract. Like I'm really grateful for the times that I paid my dues, and now it's like both you and I, like for those who, I mean, I don't know how much I can say about Tita, but she is there. She has some very big projects in the works. That's all I'm going to say for right now. And so both you and I, Tina, have sort of worked our way into these incredible dream jobs that we didn't think we would ever have. But we built character for at least a dozen years along the way. And I wouldn't change that. And I hope my kids go through the same thing,
No, absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Well, again,
I'm going to ask our next week question as what just came up to me. So
yes, please.
Let's end it here, and then I'm going to ask it there. Okay.
All right. Sounds good.
Thank you for listening.
We will talk to you next time.
Yeah. Yes. Share with us your first job as well. All right. Thank you.